Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to kind of an in-between between Skullgirls Season 1 videos and a Skullgirls lore video. Um, this is going to be a Skullgirls retrospective, where I just kind of talk about Season 1 as a whole, now that it's come to a close and everything that's happened in Skullgirls. I kind of want to talk about it, because I love this game, and I feel like it's fun content to make. I've been in a real Skullgirls mood. I've been getting inspired to make videos about this game again, outside of just patch notes, so hopefully more lore videos coming soon. But I really wanted to talk about the story, because I've been thinking about these DLC stories a lot recently. So I just want to talk about each of the characters, their story, their gameplay, how much I like them. Starting with Annie. I really like Annie, gameplay-wise. Super interesting character. I love that she has an install. I love the way her kit works. The Soul Bad Guy influence is very clear. Soul Bad Guy, Sailor Moon, I love this character. Amazing design, amazing gameplay. Not a huge fan of Annie's story mode, and that's more of a personal thing. I don't like this characterization of Annie. I know that the whole point is she's immortal, so she's jaded, and she's like, I can be doing more important things than whatever I'm doing. I just think it comes off as a bit brash for most of the story, where it kind of dampens my enjoyment of the character. But I also understand where she's coming from. It's not my favorite story. It is my least favorite of the DLC stories, but I do like all of the DLC stories. So that's not really saying that much. As far as the lore for her story goes, we didn't really get anything super new in Annie's story mode, which makes sense because Annie's been planned since the game launched, and she's been referenced in a bunch of other characters' story modes, so we already kind of know a lot about Annie. So this is more of a personal, we're talking about Annie's story instead of talking about the Skullheart and the world at large. Obviously, she fights Double and the Skullheart at the end of the story like everybody else does, but this is very much a more self-contained character study kind of on just Annie as a character and why she is the way that she is. Why she's so jaded, why she's so kind of rude, which, again, I understand it, just not a huge fan of it. The only, lore that we really get in the story is her relationship with Double, and, we get a better insight as to why she hates the Skullheart and, the Skullgirl and Double, because, obviously, her mom made the wish that made her young forever, and she has beef with Double because Double protects the Skullheart, and they make it very clear in this story that this isn't the first time they fought. Not an incredibly interesting story. The characterizations are a little weird, but it's Annie. I'm hyped because the character's in the game, and that's all that really matters to me. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have that much to say about Annie. So, with all that out of the way, we're going to move on to the next character. And the next character we get to talk about is Umbrella. Umbrella, for me, hit, quote-unquote, hit the spot a lot more than Annie did. We were expecting Annie, very excited about Annie. Umbrella, I remember when Umbrella got announced, I wasn't very hyped for this character. I was like, eh. I was never a huge Umbrella fan, design-wise, or really any-wise. I thought she was, a cool character, but more as a side character. Now that she's in the game, I've made a 180 on that opinion. I think Umbrella is very cool. Her gameplay is incredibly interesting. The kind of mix of, Sin Kisuke with, a grappler rushdown hunger mechanic archetype. Very interesting character gameplay-wise. Balanced decently well. I know she got changed recently, but she's very cool. I like Umbrella a lot. Gameplay-wise, design-wise, she's grown on me. Her story is one of the most important DLC stories that's ever come out. Mainly because we got one of the biggest reveals in modern Skullgirls lore in her story, which was the reveal that King Rainois is alive, which is important for a couple of reasons. Namely, that means if that ever comes out to the public, Parasol would not be held solely accountable for the actions of her dad in the Gigan War, which I think would shift the relationship that Parasol has with some characters, specifically Cerebella and Valentine, characters that are very, anti-Canopy royalty. I think it would be interesting to see a shift in those dynamics, because now Parasol isn't suffering for her father's sins. It's not the sins of the father for her anymore. She was just doing what she thought was right, which I think would be very interesting. Which also leads to the next plot point, which is the Royal Sisters, judging by the end of the story, have no idea that King Rainois is alive. And I think that would be an amazing plot point to visit later, because it could, you know, sow some distrust in this family. Umbrella's already very easy to manipulate, as is shown by the story. She's very easy to just like, hey, do this. You know, the Skull Girl or the Skullheart shows up, and she's very easily swayed by the Skullheart because it has her mom's voice. She kind of just wants agency, and she's willing to do whatever she can to get that agency. You know, it's a very childish feeling story, but it's relatable. You know, everybody kind of wants that sense of agency in their life, and they're willing to do whatever they can to get it, even if it might not be in their best interests in the way they go about getting that agency. And I think making King Rainoir a bit of an antagonist to the sisters would be very interesting, because their bond is already very much mother-daughter-esque, with, you know, Parasol being solely responsible for Umbrella and taking her safety very seriously. So I think it would be interesting to kind of see King Rainoir show back up in the story and be like, oh, you know, I'm back, girls. And then they're like, well, we don't really need you anymore, or something like that. Not to that exact effect, but I would love to see how they reintroduce King Rainoir back into the Skullgirls like lore, and how they do all that, because I think it would just be interesting. It's a big thing with Skullgirls Season 1 is they're very obviously setting up for like either a sequel or just future content with the way a lot of these stories end. And Umbrella Story does a great job of doing that, where this is one of the best portrayals of a character becoming the Skullgirl. It's very believable for Umbrella, because again, that agency and that, you know, I want to be with my family. It makes her a very compelling, shockingly compelling character. That's pretty much it, though. Umbrella's very interesting. She's a very fun character. Again, very loud design. I really like Umbrella. I think she's super interesting, both gameplay and story-wise, and I would love to see, you know, her and Marie interact with, like, you know, the two young girls that have, like, a bit of a Skullheart influence. Something like that. But yeah, that's about it for Umbrella. A very cool character. Really liked her story. One of the more important DLC stories. Yeah, and with all that said and done, we're going to move on to the next character. And the next character we're going to talk about is Black Dalia. For those of you who don't know, or like don't remember when I made the video about Black Dahlia story mode, this is quite possibly, not just DLC-wise, just overall entirety of Skullgirls, might be my favorite story mode in Skullgirls. I have a lot to say about this story mode, because holy, this is a very interesting story mode. Not only from a lore perspective, but Black Dahlia is such a striking character, and she's very interesting. Gameplay design-wise, I don't know if you guys remember, before Black Dahlia came out, I made a video predicting what I thought her kit would be, and it was like 90% correct, except for the supers, and it made me so happy. Like, I love that I looked at this character, saw the design language of, you know, like how they're developing this game, and I was like, I can see how this character would be playable, and she lived up to my every expectation. I love Black Dahlia. Design-wise, she's always, again, a character that's been around for a very long time in universe. Incredibly interesting character, like, visually. And her story, in the grand scheme of Skullgirls lore, her story is not incredibly important. There is one major plot point that's important, but, like, overall, like, it's mainly just the end of her story mode that's important, because it reveals an important, you know, universal plot point. This story makes up for having, you know, only one major plot point in the grand scheme of things by having Dalia be one of the best written antagonists and one of the most interesting characters in the Skullgirls universe. You see this a lot with her mindset, like how she's a very sadistic character, and they make that very clear that, like, she's an asshole. Like, her big thing is, you know, life isn't free. Everybody should have to fight for the right to exist because she had to fight for the right to exist. And I think, like, that's an interesting perspective to have, where it's just, you know, I can't have it, or I didn't have it easy, so nobody should have it easy. And it's not even just out of a spite thing. She just thinks it's like the strong survive. Like, it's a lot less about being like, oh, I experienced this hardship, so everybody should experience this hardship. And a lot more just like, almost dying to the Skullgirl made her realize that the only thing that matters in life, it's not about the connections you make, it's not about, like, the people you know. It's about the strength to survive. It's about being able to protect yourself and like being the best. And I think that's super interesting because it makes her a striking antagonist. Her big thing is like she's not doing a lot of this because it's like, oh, she says it many times during the story. It's not even that she strictly enjoys killing anymore. Like killing, she already considers herself one of the best fighters. You know, like it's very hard for her to be beat. And she wants people to see the world the way she sees the world, which is everything is, you know, it's hopeless if you're not the strongest, because one day you're going to lose, and that's it. So if you're not the strongest, you know, you shouldn't exist. You should have to fight for that right. And this comes to a head during her interaction with Big Band, which is one of my favorite scenes in any Skullgirl story mode. I really like that scene with Big Band where, you know, she beats Big Band in the fight, and she's sitting there and she's like, oh, Ben, like, you should have became like me. Like, we could have been working together. You would have been fine right now. And he's like, that's the difference between us. I forget what exactly he says, because it's something to the effect of, like, I don't need a reason to do the right thing, because I know what I'm doing is right, and that's my reason. Like, his reason for doing the right thing is because it's the right thing. There's no ulterior motive. And that's such a Big Band, like, stoic ass, like, he's just being a badass because he's a good guy quote. Because, you know, I don't need to, I know I'm doing the right thing and that's enough for me. And, like, that's his whole thing during the story. And then he asks her, it's like, but you, if you don't see somebody's face, like, twisted in fear, the doubt starts to set in that you're not the strongest. And that eats away at you. And she, like, plays it cool, whatever. And she's like, it's crazy that you're being this, you know, trying to be this insightful on your deathbed. And, you know, he talks to her and he says, what is it? You never know which day is going to be your last. Something to the effect of, like, you never know which day is going to be your last. I woke up thinking today might be the day. You've got whatever you've got to get you going. I've got a little bit of hope, and that's the difference between us. And Dalia makes, like, a huge stink about it. Like, she gets really mad, and she's like, oh, get him out of my sight. He makes me sick. And it's interesting, because it either shows that she has some semblance of respect for his character, as, like, his will is strong enough to be on the brink of death and still be hopeful and being like, I'm doing the right thing. Or it made an appeal to her humanity. Like, it shows her that maybe she is doing the wrong thing, and there's no use in the hopelessness that she's drowned her fear in. Because a lot of her story, she was scared of not being the strongest. I think that's super interesting. You know? She sees it as, like, a Big Band kind of showed her the old adage, like, she becomes visually uncomfortable when she's confronted with somebody with a strong will that's not evil and, like, jaded like she is. You know, it's the whole pressure makes cracks, pressure makes diamonds. Black Dahlia cracked under pressure and realized that, like, I have to fight to be the strongest. She's living in this permanent state of, like, adrenaline and fear where she wants to be the strongest and survive. But she also, you know, sees Big Band and she's like, but it didn't happen to him. So maybe his will is stronger. Maybe he's stronger than me. And it makes her such a striking antagonist. I love Black Dahlia. Like, you can hear I'm stumbling a lot because every time I think about this character, it's just, she's so interesting. And speaking of the lore in her story, a lot of the interaction in her story is just Dalia talking to the Skullheart. And it's really interesting because the end of her story, the implication that we get at the end of her story, lore-wise, is super important. Because at the end of the story, Dalia makes a wish, and she does not become a Skullgirl. You know, the Skullheart is like, oh, you are pure of heart. And we see that pure of heart doesn't refer to, like, good intentions or, like, having good intentions. It refers to, like, a clarity of purpose. Like, your heart is set on one thing and one thing only. Dalia just wants to fight to survive to prove that she's the strongest. So at the end of the story, she wishes to fight. She wishes to, you know, she wants to be fighting. She wants to live in a world of conflict so she can constantly prove that she is, in fact, the strongest and she deserves to exist. And I think that's a super interesting story concept. It makes her, again, an incredibly striking antagonist because she is the pure of heart. She is the legendary woman. Like, she is the woman from the legend. She is the pure of heart woman. But pure of heart doesn't mean you're a good person. It just goes to show that you have a clarity of purpose that not many other people possess. You know, so in some twisted way, she is the strongest. She has her heart set on one thing. She knows what she wants. And the only thing she wants is to fight to survive. Again, I cannot state how interesting of a design and how interesting of a premise for a villain that is. Where she doesn't care about the world at large. She doesn't care about money. She doesn't even care about killing anymore. She cares about wanting to survive and wanting to be scared to live. And I love that. Overall, this is my favorite character and story of Season 1. This is, to me, the peak of Season 1. I love this. Also, Black Dahlia, like, competitively was a very strong character and, like, is very good. Combo Breaker 2023. Sonic Fox swept with Black Dahlia, Grand Finals. Great footage. This character's dope. We're going to move on to the next character just so I don't drag out the video. So, let's move on. And finally, the last character for Season 1. Hopefully not the last DLC character. Marie. People have been waiting for Marie to be playable forever. This character's release was, like, everybody was hyped when Marie got announced. And me included. I love Marie. Like, I've always loved the concept of Marie being playable. Because I love when the final bosses become playable in fighting games. Again, this story is pretty important for the lore, and it's kind of interesting, because this, to me, strikes the best balance of a story being important to the lore, and also being a great character study. Like, it's a great character-driven story. The big thing about Marie's story is that it's mostly a self-contained plot about Marie and Patricia. It's very much a story about Marie and Peacock. It's a very emotionally provocative story. The big tone of the story is Marie, upon regaining her humanity, realizes, like, you know, she takes responsibility for her actions as a Skullgirl. She's like, I deserve to die. Like, I've caused so much strife, so much pain, that I don't deserve to go back to living a normal life after this. And seeing Peacock be like, but you're my friend, and that's good enough. Like, that's good enough justification for you to deserve a good life, because you made my life better. And it just makes it a very interesting dynamic. And it helps solidify Marie's character. It shows, you know, she's, although being a child, she has an incredibly strong resolve. It's a very interesting characterization of this character. Because for her being, like, the final boss character, she's surprisingly deep. It's not just, oh, I want to take over the world. She just wanted to save everybody. Like, that's always been Marie's whole thing. She's only wanted to save people. And, like, she got, you know, blinded along the way because the Skull Heart clouds your vision. You know, it makes you do things that you would never actually do. But she takes responsibility for that. You know, she's like, I can blame the Skull Heart all I want for, like, everything that happened. But I know deep down that a lot of that was me. I wanted to see these things happen because I felt that people deserved to be punished for what happened to us. And she takes responsibility for that. She's like, and that makes me a bad person, and I'm okay with that. Because, you know, I got to help the people that I loved. And I think, you know, it solidifies Marie's character as incredibly interesting. It makes her... She's already been a sympathetic villain. It just makes her very much more sympathetic that she recognizes that what she's done is, like, bad, and she doesn't really care. You know, she understands she has to take responsibility for it, and she's not like, oh, but, like, I'm better now. She's like, nah, like, y'all got that, kill me. Lore-wise, Marie's story is pretty interesting, mainly because, two major things. One, and the biggest thing, it shows that you can actually overcome the Skull Heart's influence, which is very interesting, because it's never happened before. And that's always kind of been the theme with Marie, is that, you know, she's the most human Skullgirl. You know, the whole thing of, like, her, like, protecting the civilians by grabbing the falling building, and, like, she's always cared about innocent lives. Um, but it's very interesting. Her being able to fully reclaim like her sentience and her humanity, though, is a really crazy development in universe, because it shows that there may be a formula if there's ever another Skullgirl for them to get their humanity back. Which, again, very interesting plot point that I would love to be expanded on, like if and when we get a season 2 for this game. The second really important lore thing, and this is like the really big one because it sets up for future story content and a season 2, because the Skull Heart gets destroyed at the end of her story mode. There is another Skull Heart now. There's a man-made Skull Heart. At the end of her story, the after credit scene, we see the Chrome Heart, which is made by Brain Drain and Valentine and Lab Zero, and it's just a man-made Skull Heart. And it, by what we see in the story, I'm assuming it was created with the intention of creating like the super anti-Skullgirl, because what better tool is there for fighting the Skullgirl than a Skullgirl that you can control? It sets up for upcoming stories, and it also kind of serves to show that Marie's story is written to be the most, like, plausibly canon story. Like, this, you know, most stories are self-contained, and the endings aren't canon. Except for some stories, because it happens, like, Big Band. Like, a lot of the DLC characters have overlap in their stories with certain events. You know, RoboFortune showing up in other stories and stuff like that. But, with Marie specifically, it feels very deliberate to make her story feel canon, because it feels like they're doing a setup, like they're setting up for a future conflict, either, you know, a sequel or more DLC characters or whatever. And I love that. I really like Marie's story. She's a great character. I love Marie's gameplay. She is one of the best feeling characters to play in this game. I really liked playing her. She's single-handedly gotten me back onto playing like Skullgirls online, and I've been having a blast. I love that she's like a very Persona 4 arena feeling character with the summons and a lot of your special moves being disjoints that have armor, and she just feels cool. And like a lot of her normals, like her heavies, have that really big like boss fight energy to them, where they're like huge disjoints that are like staggers and pulls, and she has a bunch of like big supers where she like throws you across the screen, and she has like a spirit bomb for her level 3. Like, she feels like a very final boss character, and I love that. Like, I actually love that for this game. I love it. I genuinely think that this is probably my second favorite of the DLC stories. I think it goes Black Dahlia, Marie, Umbrella, Annie. I do still think Annie is my least favorite, even after all this time. But that's a personal thing, you know? That's pretty much it for, like, the characters and their lore in the stories. Now I can just wrap up. I can talk about all the other Season 1 stuff. Obviously, I've been talking all positives for Season 1, because I am a very positive person. We gotta talk about some of the negatives. Obviously, the art book censorship. I've been very vocal about, you know, I understand why it happens, but I can also understand they didn't replace the content with anything, and that is a problem. People have an issue with the censorship. It happens, you know, censorship is necessary. People don't like to hear it, but censorship is necessary. I'm not mad about the censorship. I'm mad that there's no replacement content, and I feel like more people should be mad about that instead of being upset that it's just gone. Like, and it's like, oh, they don't... Skullgirls went woke, and it's like, that's an anti-complaint. Like, you're lost. You lost the plot. Some of the balance changes for Season 1 haven't been great. You know, all these Peacock buffs and nerfs have been a little jarring. Overall, most characters are either the best they've ever been or the most balanced they've ever been, which I'm here for. All the new music, you know, it's been playing during the video. All the new soundtracks are great. All the new stages are beautiful. All the new voice packs, you know, most DLC characters having an alternate voice pack, I like a lot. Season 1 overall for me has been like a 9 out of 10. For being a fighting game that hasn't gotten content in 8+ years, this is one of the best returns to form I've ever seen from a company. Like, they just hopped back on and didn't miss a beat. Again, I'm a shill. They don't pay me, but I'm a shill. Like, I love Autumn Games. I love Future Club. I love everything these guys do. You know, I'm an alpha tester. I've been playing every patch. I've been reporting bugs. I want this game to be the best it can be because I want people to love this game as much as I love this game. And Season 1 did it for me. It hit the spot. I really enjoyed Skullgirls Season 1. It was incredibly strong. It was, you know, balance-wise, gameplay-wise, content-wise, everything about Season 1 was great. And it only makes me more excited for the future of Skullgirls because they've announced more content is coming to mobile, to this game. You know, Season 2 may happen eventually. You know, not this year, not next year, but eventually. And even just having that glimmer of, like, there might be more, I'm happy. Like, I'm content. I'm fully content with Skullgirls. I'm having a great time. You know, a game I love is still getting content, and that's the cut and dry of it for me. More Skullgirls content is more Skullgirls content. I can never be mad about that. But yeah, this video is already dragging on a bit. This is a bit longer form for like a non-story mode video, but I wanted to get all my thoughts out because I really liked Skullgirls Season 1. And again, video's not going to be for everybody. I understand if it doesn't go over super well because it's kind of just a lot of slightly coherent rambling about Skullgirls, but I love this game, and I wanted to get my thoughts out into like a format, and some people enjoy it. So if you're one of those people, if you watch the end of the video, thank you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, rest of your night, start to your weekend, start to your week, wherever you may be. Hopefully, I'm going to get back into the swing of things, making content. Finals are wrapping up soon, so hopefully I'll be able to get back into the full swing of making videos. But yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I loved making it. If you like what you saw, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Azazel the Basement Dweller, and I hope you guys take care. See you in the next video, and have fun. Bye-bye, everybody.